Minter Creek. Just want to do a follow-up to last week's video where we examined the creek during a low tide. Today we're experiencing a pretty high tide, and so we thought we'd give you a little tour around. I've got Stina on the camera, and I'm Rachel Easton. and we're just going to take a look, a peek in the creek, if you will, and see what we can see. We are right at the Minter Creek Fish Hatchery, and there are a number of species that are raised here, but right now the timing is right for some coho salmon to be returning. So we're gonna walk along. We've already seen one fish swim by compared to last week where we saw none. So hopefully this high tide has given the fish the push that they need to be able to swim up. So let's walk along and see what we can see.
I wonder, Rachel, can you tell us where, like, I guess using the bridge as reference?
Oh, yeah.
Because I missed your first salmon video here. Like, if I were here at a low tide, how different would the water be?
So on a low tide, the creek was maybe about 10 feet across, and now we're looking at 30 or 40 feet across. I also could have walked across the creek with just my regular boots on, but today I definitely can't go in there unless I have waders on. Likewise,
I'm like, even with waders, it looks a little...
I mean, it looks like chest high out there, right in the center.
You're tippy-toeing.
And last week's video, I walked all the way out into the estuary, walking along kind of the floodplain, the marsh that's there, and that is totally flooded right now. So we can show you that at the end, but let's walk a little bit closer to the hatchery and see if we can see a few more fish. We'll also look for evidence of maybe some predators that are in this area, as well as evidence that the fish have already spawned and that their carcasses may be left behind. Got a little bit more fall color now. Last week the leaves were still kind of brownish instead of the kind of deeper oranges and yellows that we're used to seeing in the fall. This is another sign. We always think of our trees as being evergreen, but a lot of the cedars lose their oldest branches in the fall. The hard part is try not to fall, right?
Yeah.
We'll get a little bit away from those. Get down creek side. Let's head this way and see what we can see. Yeah, this is much higher than last week. Last week, that whole sandbar shallow area was exposed. There was a little bit of a puddle here, but most of the stream was confined to the far side of this little channel here. Most of those stumps were out of the water as well. So you can see how having a high tide really makes for an easier passage for fish. They can just swim up. There's not too much of a flow, and part of that is because we haven't had a ton of rain this week. The creek color will begin to change a little bit as well as the leaves fall and all of the tannins from those leaves leach into the water. The creek will be stained almost like tea, which I guess is tannins from a leaf. So we're just making Northwest tea here in our creeks, I guess.
Awesome.
You can see the flow is not really fast with a few of those little leaves from the willow tree going by.
And for those of you just tuning in, if you want to let us know where you're tuning in from, we always like that information. As well as if you have any questions or wonders, type those in the comments as well, and we'll do our best to answer them live.
Yeah. Can we talk about this plant here for a second? Because this is one of my most hated plants, and I'm not a plant hater. This is called Japanese knotweed or giant knotweed, and it has these really big, kind of heart-shaped leaves. They almost look like cottonwood leaves, but larger. And this is a very, very invasive species. It gets into our waterways. It particularly likes riparian areas, so areas on either side of a stream or places where there's flowing fresh water, moist soil. This plant is going to thrive. And the reason why it's so dangerous is it comes in, it infiltrates, it displaces our native species. And then it is a deciduous plant, so it's going to die back almost entirely, which leaves the ground here very unprotected. We here in the evergreen state, we're kind of known for our green understory, right? We have salal and kinnikinick and Oregon grape and all of these ferns that would normally be here and exist all the time. So when we get a lot of rain, that's going to kind of eliminate the ability for that to cause erosion. But when this dies back entirely, it's going to allow erosion to really happen. Not to mention, this is just huge, dense cover. It blocks a lot of light. It's not native, and it's the only thing that's here. It's even outcompeted the Himalayan blackberry, which is another invasive species. So this stuff is just awful. it's considered a noxious weed. We don't like it. It's very, very hard to eradicate. It takes years and years and years of really dogged removal and even the use of some pretty heavy-duty pesticides in most cases to get it really under control. So yeah, I don't like this one. Ooh, there's a bunch of little birds right near us.
We're also seeing some fisher folks out and about. Try not to interrupt them too much, but you can see how deep the creek is with this guy and the waders here. Wait, I'm gonna get closer to you. What is this plant you're talking
This is
about?
willow. I can't remember exactly what kind of willow, but willows really thrive here, and it's one that has fallen down and is still growing. Think you know it?
It's a Minter Creek willow.
Yeah, there it is. And you can see there's predation on here, so there's insects that have eaten this. Our knotweed is not really preyed upon by the species of insects that are native here, so that's another reason why it's problematic. But this willow tree, you can see has fallen across and now it's still growing upright. When remediation work is done and people are replanting disturbed areas, willow, if the area is moist, is really easy to replant because you literally just cut off a chunk and sink it into the ground, and it will usually root right where you put it and be just fine.
I think you can see some of that willow out at Donkey Creek where they've daylighted that creek, and there's some nice native
restoration
plants
work there,
including the willow chunks. Here's some of that Himalayan blackberry Rachel mentioned.
Oh yeah, invasive, awful, but at least it gives us delicious berries. The knotweed doesn't even do that.
Oh my gosh, worthless. Some more looks at the hatchery. I just got blackberried.
This is a really common place to fish because of the concentration of fish that swim up this stream. There are a number of them that return here, but the trick is getting them to bite anything, because once they hit the fresh water, most salmon species stop eating entirely. So occasionally you can kind of trick them into using their instincts to grab a hold of your hook, but in general, most of the fish are not striking too much at this stage in their life, especially when they've traveled a really far distance, and some of them have begun to kind of degrade and they almost rot while they're still alive. These poor fish, they have a hard time, and most of that is due to the fact that their reproductive organs really take over their internal bodies. Like everything shrinks up, their intestines wither away, their stomach shrivels up to almost nothing, to make room for eggs and sperm that they'll use to create the next generation of salmon.
I always like to quote one of the nice Rachel sweatshirts where it talks about how salmon are the fish that die for love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. So earlier in the year, when the king salmon were running in this creek, there was almost wall-to-wall fish in this body of water, and we're nearing the time of the year when we'll start to see more chum salmon. They kind of come back in November though, so we're a little early for chum, although it is possible that we might see one or two. They do come up the creek. Sometimes they have their own sense of timing. So we'll keep doing these updates for you to try to capture exactly when the fish are coming up, because they are really spectacular to see. And this is a place that's open to the public. So grab your mask and come on down and you can walk this little short path that we did. The parking is right on the road. And you just kind of walk down and you can come view salmon in their natural habitat.
Yeah. Yeah.
More willow trees and cedar trees. This cedar tree is just barely hanging on to life over here.
Dangling over. Awesome, awesome. Well, shall we leave you all with that? Any last questions? Going once? Going twice? Tune in next time when we take a peek in the creek and hopefully see some more fish. Cheers, everybody!